Have you guys ever looked at those amazing sliders and thought, wish I could also make them? Well, guess what? We can actually make them with Elementor free without having any extra plugins. You see, Elementor actually uses something called SwiperJS library, and this library is an easier way to make a slider. Now with the Elementor's pre-built carousel option, we don't really have much options, but you can see that in the SwiperJS, we actually have lot more control and lot more options for the design. For example, we have this vertical slider which we can make it very easily. We have something like this cube slider, this cover flow slider, this flip slider, this card slider, this creative slider, which is the most versatile one because you can use your custom properties to make the sliders move. If you go into the JS code, you will find that this has like lot more control and lot more options. You could see this is the first one, second, third, and you could see this is like all same slider but just changing some properties. We have a mouse wheel control too, and we also have this thumb gallery, and the best part is you can actually make this thumb gallery be anyway, so it doesn't have to be looking just one image like this. You could have like a big image with text in it, heading and all, and maybe you want to create a testimonial where it would say a company name and then some text, a small description of them, and then show the text around here. That's the crazy part about this using SwiperJS library, because you can use your custom elements without having to code much. And don't worry, even if you don't understand coding, it's very basic. I will explain every single thing. Even someone who has never done a coding would able to do it, okay? There's also something like this rewind properties and some basic properties, but just know that there's like a lot more options in here. You could see that you could check on the documentations like the SwiperJS resources demos, and I'm only going to make the ones that I think are the most common one, but if you want a specific one, just leave that in the comments. And guess what, I will also be providing a free template for it. But even though I'm providing a free template, you still need to watch this video so that you could customize it to your own liking. And also I will be creating a specific video which would show how to make these templates and how to customize these templates, but I will not explain how this template works. In that video, I'll only explain how to customize or change some values. Now if you go to the live demo, you would see the templates that I've made. So I've made base swiper, which is what we are going to make today. And this is like very important because this video is going to be the base, and then the future videos that I make for the other sliders would be dependent on this video. So if you don't watch this video, it would be harder to make the other sliders. And in this video, I also want to go much more in detail so that you understand it like a lot more properly. So you could see that this is the slider that we can make, and obviously we could add like text. We can even add, any way you want this to be popping in. This is a base slider, so which is why it's like the most basic stuff, so that you could just copy this layout, go to your client's website or your website, and then start customizing. And the reason why I made this is because if I have a client and he has a design, like his website has a particular design, I can just copy this and start from scratch, instead of if this was a complicated design, then it would be harder to go back and then change all the values that I did previously. But don't worry, I will be creating a custom design in future, which would be provided in future videos. But this is like the base layout for the first one, which we are going to make today. Then we have vertical swiper, which would be a particular different video. You could see this is how it works. We can also control with mouse wheel, but right now it is disabled. I'll show in that video how to change it, even in this video too. Then we have autoplay. You could see that the progress bar going like this, and the best part is you could actually add number in here or anything. If you know a bit JavaScript, you would be able to do even more, but I'll teach you how to do some basic like this, okay? And this one would be in another video, okay, for autoplay video. Then we have cube slider. It's very specific niche related, I think. Probably it's not going to be used for every single one, but a specific video would be for this one too. Then we have a cover flow, and you could see that we can actually change the text or any other element that we want. It doesn't have to be arrows always. And you could see we have multiple options for the pagination too, for all of them, okay, not just this one. And the best part is you could even decide how much like the rotation should be, how much depth should be, and all. Then we have flip slider. Then there's going to be a card slider. You could see you could make it loop if you want, but I found out that it looks better without having the loop. Then this one would be the creative one, which would be, I think, a bigger video too, because this one has like a lot more controls than the other ones. Then we have thumbnail slider. Again, another thing that you could make it however you want. These are basically containers, right? So you could add anything in here. So maybe if you have a traveling website, you could say like the name of the place, some small images, some small description, and then a big stuff around here too. And then we have a curve swiper, which would be a particular video. So for this one, I've actually made something for my client, but I used a different code for their website. And this one is a different code, but I found the code on CodePen from someone else, where he showed how to use SwiperJS and the curved one. So again, a new video would be available for this one too. Then we are going to have panorama sliders. You could see it creates this curve one, and there are two methods to do it. One is like very quick, and the second one is this one. So again, it would be explained in that video. So how about we start it? If you want, get the template, but again, the templates tutorial video, how to use a template, would be uploaded a bit later at the end. So keep that in mind, okay? So this blog post would be available in the description, which is my blog page, where I would go down. It's not updated, you could see. I have to update all this stuff, but actually this has been updated. So this base slider and all, I actually have written all the stuff that we need. Again, you don't need to read it if you are watching this video, but this also is a quick way to check if in future you do not want to watch the video again and then quickly want to check what it does. This is the code, which is very basic one. It looks big because you can see it's one line only, like one lines, and then we go next page. This is like very basic SwiperJS code, and some extra stuff like pagination style, how to change it, then how to add autoplay, then adding more effects. This one would be a new video. And then there is like an extra stuff which is creating extra buttons for next and previous. That is, I'll explain that at the end very quickly. So you could see the base structure that we want to make. So this is the structure, and how did I know what structure I need to make for this SwiperJS to work? Well, the thing is, SwiperJS requires a particular structure for it to work, and it's this one. And again, if you do not understand HTML and CSS, I'll give a very quick explanation. So every time you create a container, we are basically creating a div like this. So this is same as going into Elementor and adding a container. Make sure it's full width, okay, not a boxed one. If you use a boxed layout, let me explain what happens. Okay, so let me make this 500 pixels, and let's make this, I guess, I don't know, like red color. So you could see this is the red color. If I do inspect and click this, you would see that we actually have a div. You could see div, and it ends around here, and there's an extra div inside of this, and this div is actually whatever size you have given around here. So that's not the layout they want around here, okay? They don't want that layout. We want only one of it, which is why we will use full width always, and then remove this. And again, if you want to have a box layout, then you could obviously create a box container and then add this container, this full width container inside of this, okay? So that way you would have a box layout if you want to use a box layout. But again, like I said, that typing div is same as typing or just adding a container. Now the way we specify what this container is, by typing class in quotation mark, we type something like its name. So how to identify this container? So we can type it as DM slide. And then in CSS, what we simply do is we type .dm slide like this. Oops. And these are like two different files. Okay, this is HTML, this is CSS. And whenever we type something like .dm slide and in curly brackets, we can actually add something like styling, like height should be 500 pixels, the width should be 100%, like this. But this is something that is done for us by the Elementor, right? But what Elementor basically does is that it adds all the stuff that you have added in here via the CSS styling. So even if you check in here, let me do inspect. Let me show you that this slide has the background color around here. You could see it has dot and all that stuff. And there's lot more CSS classes. So every time you add a space, you're going to have multiple CSS classes. In Elementor version 4, which I don't know when it's going to release, but they have actually removed lots of the extra classes and made it like much more optimized. So in here, they have like so many CSS classes for just one container. You could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we don't really need that much. So in future, they would be fixing like a lot more stuff for this. And obviously when you type something like your own name, like DM slide, you could add extra CSS classes. If you type space, you could have more. It's also full width right now. Okay, so let's see. You could see now we only have one div. So you could see open bracket div and then close bracket div. So this is just one container. It's just one div, nothing else. Okay, and then it has like width, display flex, and all that stuff that we have added from here. Okay, like this stuff. So what this basically does is that it's just telling us how the container should be. So you could say this div ends around here. You would tell by the spaces that they have used. Okay, so this div ends around here. So there's a container, and inside of this container there are multiple containers. So there's first container called swiper wrapper, and this swiper ends around here, which means this container has 3 more containers, and these are slides. And in there we have like, you know, pagination if you want, if you need navigation button and scroll bar and all that stuff. So let's create this same layout or similar layout. So I'm just going to add a container. This one would be, we can keep this one boxed. So let's make this a bigger one. And inside of this, we will start making this container. Okay. So let's create a full width one like this. This one would be our swiper. I'll call it base swiper. So this is just a naming. This is not for, you know, actual CSS classes. This is just for you to know which container is which. And you could get the structure from here like this. So you can see we already created a base slider. Inside of this, we need something called swiper wrapper. So if we go in here, we can go and type, let's say, let's just type swiper wrapper full width. Okay. If you don't want to like check this, you could actually go to the blog page and you will find the layout around here. Okay. Now inside the wrapper there needs to be our slides. So let's add our slides. So let's add the container, and this one would be our slide 1 like this. Okay, and then we can duplicate it, call this like slide 2 and slide 3. There we go. So we got this layout. Like this swiper wrapper, it has 3 containers called swiper slide. So you could see they have slide, and then this one is pagination, button, and all that stuff. So let's add our pagination. So in our base swiper, I'll just add an icon. This one would be our left arrow. Then I'll add the second arrow, which would be our right one like this. And then I'll add another container, which would be our pagination. Okay, again, these are like all optional. So if you want navigation arrow or not, if you want pagination and all or not. Okay. And we can see we got our pagination, the previous next button, and scroll bar. I'm not showing this video. And you could see this is how it looks. Now the best part is, and I think it's better because I found out just yesterday, that instead of having all of this inside of this one, you could have it as a sibling. What this basically means is that right now this is a child. Okay, so this is the parent, because you could see, so these are all child of this swiper. But what you could also do is you could have all of this as siblings too for this base swiper. And this actually, I found out that it works better. You could see in here, we have actually used as a child, all of them are child. You could also add it in a specific container if you want. Okay. So you could also do siblings. Let's first do with child, and then we will do with, you know, creating siblings, because I found that it's better. So let's create extra container. Again, for navigation pagination, it doesn't matter if you add it in extra container or not. So I'll just call it as, I don't know, I'll just call it like navigations. We can add our icons and all, but let's start giving a bit of a color so that we can see which is what. So this is the main one. So let's just ignore that. Let's give our base swiper a color. So let's give it like red. Our swiper wrapper, let's give it a bit of I guess yellow. I know these are ugly colors, but it's quick to differentiate. And then we have our icons, pagination, and an extra container that I made myself. It's not provided in the documentation like this one, but this one we can actually, for the icons and pagination, we can just place it however we want. So let's add our icons inside of this. And then I can make it go left to right like this navigation, and have this pagination be in center, so that we get this layout, which is left arrow, right arrow, and pagination. Again, these are like your option, how you want to do it. Okay, you don't have to do this navigation the way I've done it. You could go and maybe keep it outside like this, give it position absolute, feel free to like place it in the center by doing like 50% from top like this. And then when you go to transform, you do offset of -50, not for the X, for the Y. And then it would be in center, but again this only if you make all of this like disappear like this. So you could see it's in center. So it's your choice how you want to place it, where you want to place it. For me, I'm just going to keep it the way I've created in the template. So we can see how this looks. I'll make the pagination container a bit smaller, you could see, but this one, this actually does nothing because we will be changing it via the code. So one thing I want you guys to know that Elementor uses its own SwiperJS file, so that it is like a custom file. And the issue with that is that when we try to make it ourselves using SwiperJS library, it kind of conflicts with it, which is why I have changed the code a bit so that it does not conflict with Elementor ones. And then there is also one issue where for some reason the styling that SwiperJS should add does not get added automatically. I don't know if it's something to do with Elementor, but basically SwiperJS would automatically add styling to our elements like default styling, but with Elementor it is only adding few of them, which is why in the code I have to manually add it, and I'll show you how to do it in this video. So now this is how it looks, very ugly right now. So one thing we need to do is, you could see the base swiper is red, right? But there is a gap in here. And why is that? Because we have something called padding. So when we remove the padding, it removes that gap. So keep that in mind, we do not want that padding. Swiper wrapper, this one also should not have that padding. If you check in here, you could see there's a gap between the slides and all. So let's remove the padding, and also let's remove the gap. So you could see there's a gap in between each of the slides. So if I make this one have some color, let's copy and paste this style. There we go. You could see there's a gap in here. We don't want that gap. This gap is controlled by the swiper in the code. So we don't want any gap. It should be sticking like this. And you could see now, even though there is like multiple slides, we are only seeing only these slides, even though we have swiper wrapper and base swiper. So for the navigation, I will make it be in center like this. Okay, let's remove the color because I don't like how it's looking. And there we go. Now this is how it looks. Now for a swiper wrapper, we want it to go left to right because that's how our slide is, right? So let's do left to right, and we got 1, 2, 3 slides like this. You could see. Now the thing is, for SwiperJS to work properly, we need to give a swiper wrapper a sizing. If you don't add this, it would just not work. So it needs to have proper sizing so that it can calculate how much it needs to move the slides so that it works properly. Okay, so I just changed some color so that it's easy to see. So this is our base swiper, this is swiper wrapper. There is 3 slides. We have a navigation which has 1 icon, 1 pagination, and 1 more icon for the next and previous one. Now what we will do is we will add an HTML widget after everything, and I prefer it to place it outside so that it works better, so that it does not create like extra spacing inside of it. Okay, if you don't want to show this, you could basically hide this what you call like this HTML widget. Obviously it never shows, but the thing is if you have something like gap, it is actually, you can see it's taking that gap from here to here. So if you add any other element, there would be an extra gap. So when you do responsive hidden, it just does not be there, but the code still works. Let's go to our blog page, and here we will find the code. So you could see that this is going to be same for every other blog page that you will see for the slider. So first thing first, there would be a code around here which is DM base swiper. Let's copy this, and you would see that in the code it's also used around here. So you could also check in the code here, or you could just check from here. Let's go to our page, and this one would be given to our main container. You could see base swiper like this. Let's give it DM base swiper. Next, you could see that I haven't really added all the name around here. I've only written something called wrapper class is used to use custom CSS class for swiper wrapper. Where is the wrapper class? Where is the slide class? Where is the next L, previous L? Well, if you go down in the code, you will find it. Wrapper class, slider class, navigation, and pagination. So wrapper class is DM base swiper wrapper. Let's copy to our wrapper. Let's copy the slide class to our slides. Let's copy our next L. You could say it says element, okay, so which is why there's a dot added, because then we are specifying that it's a class, but here it says class, so we do not have to type dot because we are already saying that it's a class. So in here you do not need to copy the dot, you only need to copy the DM base swiper next, but do not copy the dot, okay. Let's give it to the next icon. Let's copy the previous one. And there's a pagination, so we'll copy DM base swiper pagination without the dot, okay. And then we got all of the stuff added. Now all you simply need to do is click copy in here, and this one would copy the whole code. And if as soon as I go into HTML and add this, suddenly you could see something just happen. And that is because I wrote this code so that it overrides the element's default styling so that the slider works properly. You would see that now each slide is taking the same height as a swiper wrapper. Now this one is actually controlled via the code, so don't worry about it. So you could see that it is each slide, and each slide can be controlled via the code. I'll show how to do that. And in the swiper wrapper, if I let's say go to tablet, it works properly, but in the mobile it doesn't look right? And the reason for this is because this wrap. So by default Elementor for some reason uses wrap this one for mobile if you do not select anything. And what this basically means is that if this container does not have space, then it will just move to the next area. If it does not have space, it will move to the next area. So the way we can fix it is by making no wrap. For desktop and tablet, when you do row, it automatically uses this, but let's still use it in case it does not work properly, and let's add it around here too, okay. So the way it works is that this base swiper is this size, right? And then this is the swiper wrapper, which has all these slides. What this base swiper wrapper happens is when we go to transform, you could say it moves like this much distance. So this swiper wrapper basically is a long strip, like very long strip, even bigger than your like desktop, and then it basically just moves particular slide automatically calculated. So what we need to do is we need to go to our base swiper and give it overflow hidden like this. Now the thing is, because we are using horizontal, it just giving overflow hidden here works, but if we were using vertical, it would be creating a problem for this navigation buttons, okay. Which is why the best part is you could keep this outside this swiper too, but I'll explain that a bit later, or you could just watch the vertical video where I'll go in much more detail for it. So let's do publish and see if it works. So let's wait for it to work. You could see there's a gap in here because even though we said no gap, it's because in the code I've set it. I'll explain how to change it, and you could see it is working. There's only like 2 dots, okay, so that's why it's like this. Okay, so you could say it is a bit glitchy, but I actually forgot to update the code, that's why. So I will be doing some changes to the code. I forgot to update it in the blog page, but you could see right now it is like one page at a time, and it works properly. And I explain how to do like multiple slides too, but this stuff is actually going up to down. We don't want that. If you want it, you could keep it like this for let's say vertical slide or anything, or any particular design. Maybe you want to place this around here by giving by giving this position absolute and all. But you could select our pagination, go layout, and do left to right. And you could also see that even though I'm changing this, it's not working because in the code I've set something to make it be smaller size, and I'll explain a bit later for that too. And you could see now it shows properly, and these are like specific styling that I have done, and you could actually change it to your own liking. So I'll explain that when we do more styling stuff. So how about we first learn some basic quicker customization, and then we'll slowly change to like changing the pagination, how to add the autoplay and all that stuff. So let me copy this code, which is like very basic in here. Let me remove this, and let's go from the top. So you could see that we have given DM base swiper to this swiper, you could see. So that way we basically tell that, hey, this is going to be my new swiper container. We have direction, horizontal or vertical. Now for the vertical, I'll create different video because we need to change some styling for it. For example, we need to make it go up to down, and then we need to place it outside. We also need to give it specific height and all. So that would be a different video. It's not much different changes, but I think it would be good video because then if someone is searching for vertical slider, they can just get that video instead. Then we have loop true, and you could see now it loops. If you turn this to false, it would basically just not loop. So I just turn this to false. If I go now, you could see I'm not able to make this go left and right because loop is false. Then we have grab cursor. This is nothing but our mouse changing to this hand icon, you could see. Then we have mouse wheel. So let's do mouse wheel to be true. I'll also make the loop true again, and then mouse wheel to be true again. Let's do publish. Now if I scroll, you could see I'm able to change this stuff via our scroll. Now again, you know that because we are using like our Elementor stuff, you can make it however size you want. You could make it full height, you could make it full width, you could make your own design like full width container and all. Next is center slides, and there is also initial slides. So this too I have added because there was some issue with center slides where it would not start from the first slide. So that I'll explain, but let's just do center slides true first. But you know, for center slides to work, we actually need to have more containers so that we can understand if it works nicer or not. So how about we do that later and first check the next stuff. So again, this is like very basic. We just tell which is the wrapper class, which is the slide class, which is the navigation class, which is the pagination, and then this bullet class and bullet active class. This we do not add it manually, but when SwiperJS creates this pagination like this bullet ones, we basically tell that, hey, just give them the class DM base bullet, and whichever is active, give it DM base bullet active. So whichever is active would have that class, and that way we can customize it to our own liking. And clickable to is basically you can click on it or not. Then you could see breakpoints in here. This is very important. Now you could see that there is something called space between, slides per view, slides per group. Now the thing is, if you want to use same of them, let's say if you want to use space between 20 for all three of them, you can simply just remove it and then type it in here like this, like space between 20, and don't forget to add a comma at the end, okay? And this one would basically apply for desktop, mobile or tablet. And I didn't want that, so I actually removed it from here. So you have to remove it from here, and then in the breakpoints you can have multiple different values. Even though I've given like same one, you could have different values. So this one is 0. What this means is that from 0 to 767 pixels. If I go in here, you could see that it says mobile portrait up to 767 pixels, tablet up to 1024 pixels, and then desktop. So whenever you add some styling in here, like after changing this and then changing some styling, this one also applies to the mobile. But if you go into mobile and add another styling, then it only applies till 767 to 1024 pixels. So same way, this one works a bit different, where this one is for mobile, this one is for the tablet, and this one is for the desktop. So it starts from 0 to 767. This one is like anything above 767 pixels, and this is anything above 1024 pixels. It's weird. It's like different than Elementor's, like, you know, bottom, but it's like from this to above part. So just know that this is for mobile, tablet, and then desktop. So if you use this slides per view, which is 1, and change this to something like 3, but before that, let's add some more slides. And again, if you're wondering how can I customize it, you could basically just hide the top ones, and then you can customize the third one, fourth one, and all that stuff. So let's create a few more. So let's do 4. So I just added like a background for each one of them. You could see I didn't really style much. It just like direct whatever we got it, and I just added directly. So didn't do cover, background cover, or height and all that stuff. So you could see this is how it looks right now. There is some, you know, this image is probably not big enough, so you could set it to background cover and all that stuff too, however you want. Now in our HTML, I'm just going to turn this slides per view to be 3 for the desktop, 2 for the mobile, for the tablet, and 1 for the mobile. So let's do publish, and you could see we got 3 slides, and you could see we are seeing some yellowish stuff. That is probably because of this one, okay? We added the colors at the start. So now we have 3 slides, and you could see every time I click, we only move one of it. Okay, we don't move multiple of them, and that is simply because we have set slide per group to be 1. So if you set it to be 2, then it will do 2 slides at a time. If you set it to be 3, it will do 3 slides at a time. So if I go into inspect, make it smaller, you could see how this looks. It's now 2 slides. If I go to mobile, you could see it's only 1 slide. You could see. So let's close this. And then the spacing between these slides or these dots is controlled by this pagination gap. Okay, so if you make this 10, it would be like a lot more closer. Now if I change the slide group to be, let's say 2, that would do 2 slides at a time. So you could see it now slides 2, and there are also less dots because it only can move this many times. So I'm just going to reset it to be 1. Now there is something called slides per wave auto, and what this does is that it automatically checks the slides width and then tries to fit it in that container. And it's a very good one. Let's say if you want your slides to be 300 pixels in width, and if you have, let's say, this size of monitor, which is 1920, it will show only 3. But if someone is using a wide screen, it will show, let's say, 5, 6 or something based on the width of the swiper wrapper. Okay, so this one. So let me explain to you what I mean. So let's go to our code, and then let's remove this from here. Okay, so let's remove slides per wave, and let's remove it, and let's go up around here and then type, this is a comma. Okay, you have to add comma, and in here in quotation, double quotation, we type auto. Okay, let's copy this code and paste it in our stuff. Now you would see that nothing would happen because right now we haven't really set the width of it. So let's set the width of our containers. Now you could do manually changes like this too, where each one of them you could change to specific ones. So maybe one can be full size, one can be other size. A quick way would be to use the CSS class like this, and then typing it in here like this, .dm base swiper, and then width to be 300 pixels, and that way it would apply to all of them instead of going manually one by one. But you know what, let's do it one by one because I feel like not everyone would be able to code. So let's make this, let's say 300 pixels. Oops, pixels 300. Let's do 350. Okay, let's copy this and let's do for each one of them. I'm going to do publish after I add it for every one of them, and you would see that there is like different amounts. So right now you would see that all of them are like this many amounts, but if I, let's say, go into inspect, for mobile you will need to go back and add it. Okay, you could see like this because for some reason Elementor makes it like smaller. I don't know why this tool is like messed up, so let's just make it like this. Okay, so you could see that if it's a smaller screen, it's only showing 2. You could see it's only showing 2, but if you go to bigger screen and then maybe you have a wider screen, then it would be like more. And another thing is, let's say if I make this be like, if I make this be not boxed and full width like this, then you could see that our swiper is fitting this many types. So again, if you go to, let's say, some wide screen and all, if I do inspect and then do, I guess, a wide screen like this, you could see this is how it looks. Okay, it's able to fit all slides in here, so there's no sliding, but that's how it looks basically. So I'm just going to reset everything to boxed. So you could see this is how it looks, and it's looping. Now let's try with centered slides. So we decided to do centered slides later, so let's try that. So you could see that the centered slide is set to false. We can set this to true. Let's do this. Let's set the centered slide to be true. Let's do publish. Let's check in the live page, and you could see right now it's centered, but this is my first slide, right? Like this is my first slide, so why is this one showing around here? And you could see why I'm at the last page automatically. Now this one is, I think it's very dependent on whether this happens to you or not. I don't know what the actual reason for this to happen is. Some people say that it only happens when you do loop through, it only happens when you do slides per view auto and loop through. But again, if it's from your first page, you do not need to do this step. But if it's from here, what you simply need to do is you need to tell that the initial slide should be 1. So right now this is set to 0 for some reason, and this is set to 1 because this is an index value. Okay, so the first slide is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. But for some reason, when you use center slides true and slides per view auto, it starts from the last page. And the way we can fix it is by simply typing 1 at the initial slide, so around here, because it thinks that this is 0 and this is 1. So we can just say that, hey, just do 1 for the starting. All I did is change this to 1. Okay, and you can see now this one is at the center and works properly. Now there is some more stuff. If you go to this page, you will see that there is like few more stuff that I've written. Actually, I've already shown this many, but there's something called free mode, and I don't know why it sometimes works well, it sometimes does not. But let's see and add it after this one called free mode true. Let's see if it works nicely or not. So it is not working, but that is because of loop through. So I found that in Elementor, when you use loop through, it does not work well. And what this basically means is that it can make it glide a bit better. So it glides the, like this text to be gliding instead of going one by one. So you could see it glides like this. So if I do smaller, it would just do this. If I do fast, it would do this. And if you check in the demos for this guys, so you could see that if I go here, it also works nicely. But if you do loop, it does not, because what it does is that as soon as it reaches here, it needs to start moving this container around here. So I found that it works better when it's like not looped and it's nicely gliding like this. Now one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my slides back to 100%. Okay, and I'll show you one other method to do multiple slides in one, where you could show some slides like a sneak peek of the previous slide and sneak peek of the next slide. Now for offset, you can simply just type .dm. So basically we want the same CSS class for the slides so that we can change its styling based on the code, or like the width of it based with our code. So let's type .dm base swiper slide, and we will type the code, which is this one. Now what this basically does is that it's just doing -200 pixel and then how much slides you want per page. So when you do -200 pixel, there would be left offset of 100, right offset of 100, and then 3 basically means that it would only show 3 slides. So if I copy this and paste it in here, it would say it looks a bit different in here, but don't worry, let's publish and see in the live page. And you can see how this looks. There is 3 slides showing, but 100 pixels on the left, 100 pixel on the right, and we can see a bit of the glimpse from left and right like this. The way we can make it responsive is very basic. You could just type at media max width 1024 pixels like this. Now what this means is that any code that is added in here would only apply to devices which is 1024 pixels or below. So this one would apply to both tablet and mobile, unless you go down, type this again and say that for 767 pixel, because that's the mobile one. You could see mobile, tablet. Then what this means is that it will try to apply this for any devices that is below 1024 pixel, but this one is like, hey, I'm going to apply my styling for 767 pixel and below. So this one is for mobile, this one is for the tablet. If you don't add this, then this effect would apply to both mobile and tablet, because obviously our mobile is lower than 1024 pixels. And let's just copy this. Let's paste it in here. And all you simply do is copy our styling like this much in here. Okay. Again, if you want to know a bit more, you do not have to copy all the styling which is available in here. But for now, we only have one, right? That is width. But if you had something, let's say height and something else, let's say you had also height in here, but all 3 of them use same height, then you do not need to go in here and type, height. Like you do not have to type height 500 pixels, height 500 pixels, and then height 500 pixels. If all 3 of them are same, you just need to type the values that you want different for each one of them. Okay, so I'm just going to remove this. So we want different width for each one of them. So I'll do 2, then I'll turn this to 100 for the mobile, and then I'll turn this to 80, and then do, let's say, 1, like this. Let's do publish. And you would see this one actually been used in the panorama slider, where it's showing a bit around here. You could see left and right. And now we got left and right like this. Now another thing is that you could see that our navigation is actually in our base swiper. But the thing is, you can actually make this be outside like this. So as long as they are siblings, you could actually make it use them. You could also place them outside if you want, like this. It's your choice. You could make it be position absolute so that it's around here. You could do any styling that you want. You could change this to text, next, or previous, anything that you want. You could say it still works properly. Styling of our, this buttons, so like this dots. So around here you could see that I have for bullet pagination. So this is the width and height. So what the size should be. Aspect ratio is 1 so that they're always square. The background is set to black. You could change it to your own hex value. Border radius is 100 so that it is like a circle. But again, you could make it, your own shape. If you know how to use clip path, you could probably make it like diamond shape and all. The opacity is given 0.2 by default. And then we have DM base bullet and then dot DM base bullet active. So what this means is that when it's active, it will use opacity 1. You could also give like different colors. So maybe you could give background, like just copy this around here and say background blue. You could make the border radius be different. Any CSS property that you want, you could change around here. Okay. Now let's learn how we can add some styling like this animations inside of this. Okay. So I'm just going to make it be full size again because it works better when it's full size for the animations. It looks prettier, I mean. Let's go to our slides. Let's go and make it in the slide 2 and let's add a heading around here. Okay. And I'll just make it white, make it be center, I guess, like this. Now how can we animate this? If you go down in the code, you will see one part which is inner content animation boilerplate. Wow. Now what does boilerplate means is that it's simply just how the layout looks like and what you need to type. So if you have more stuff, you could just copy this and then change some stuff. But this is just a way how the layout or what the code looks like. That's why it's a boilerplate. It's just a reference. So in here, you could see that there's something called DM base swiper slide dot swiper slide active. What this basically means is that if I do inspect, if I select the slide, you could see that this is called DM base swiper slide because we gave that, we gave each slide DM base swiper slide. So it says that DM base swiper slide and then rest of it is added by Elementor, like all these slides. But there is something called swiper slide active, and this swiper slide active is only added to the one that has this, that is the visible one. You could see swiper slide active. Now it will go to the next one. I don't know why it's not updating pretty quickly, but just know that it works like that. So in the code, when you type .dm base swiper slide and do no space, what this means is that this code will only apply when both of these CSS class are available. But when you do space, what this means is that it is the inner container. Let me do a quick explanation in here because I have Elementor Pro. Doesn't require Elementor Pro, but just to let you guys know. Let's say this is the text and we'll call it as DM text. Let's place it in center and let's call this as DM container. Like DM container. Now, if I go in here and type .dm container like this, and then type .dm text and say that opacity should be 0.2, you would say this is how it looks. But if I copy this and paste it outside, you would see it does not show that one. But if I go in here and then remove that DM container part, you would see both of them are 0.2 because DM text is given both of them. But if I type like this with a space, it basically means that only apply it if this is inside DM container. You could see. But then there's also another thing is if I go into the styling and call it as dot active, no space. Okay, no space basically means that this CSS class dot active should be also available in here. So you could see right now it's not showing us as the opacity, but if I add active by doing space, it works. You could see, and that basically means is that when both of the CSS classes are in here, then only the inner element DM text should have this opacity. So that's all that is to it. When both of these are there, then only do this stuff to the text, which is an animation. You can check CSS animation code, or just go online. Well, just go to YouTube and look into CSS animation. It's very basic. You could probably learn it in under like 5 minutes. So we have given it an animation. The animation is DM base anim. So this is the name. We can see this is the keyframes. So DM base anim, we are saying that hey, this animation, it needs to be used, okay, when there is a slider active. It should run for 1 second, and there's an ease in and ease out, so that it starts a bit slower, speeds up in the middle, and ends a bit slower, instead of having constant speed. And forwards basically means that it should not loop and should stop at the end location. So we are saying that at starting, which is 0%, the opacity should be 0, and the transform Y, which is like up and down, should be 100 pixel, which is same as saying this one, 100 pixels. So when it is by default, it should be 100 pixel down, but when it gets active, which means it's the active slide, okay, so when it's here, it's going to have this one, but as soon as we do here, it will start running this animation, which it will go from 100 to 0, and opacity from 0 to 1. So it will go to 0 like this. So what we simply need to do is we need to give it DM base text like this. Let's copy and paste. Now you would see that if I do preview changes, you would see it shows in here. So if I do next, it shows. You could see it plays again. Now, what if I want to use this animation again? So instead of creating, let's say if I do this one and call this like second text, and let's give it, let's say DM base slide 2, because I've already created, you could see. Let's say if I want to use animation where it also goes from bottom to down. We already have an animation created here, so we do not need to create again and again. We do not need to create DM base slider anim 2. We do not need to create again and again. We can basically use this animation again. So you could see I've set it to be animation DM slider anim, the same stuff, animation for year 2, which is slide 2, but I've given a delay of 0.3 so that they do not start together, but they start one after another. So this one would have 0.3 delay. But it is very important that we give opacity 0, because it should be hidden by default. So let me first show you what happens by just adding 2 around here. And you could see it works. It's a delay. What would happen if I make this opacity to be 1? Okay, so instead of making it 0 by default, let's make it 1 and see what would happen. You could see the second text was visible here, then it went from bottom to up. Which is why I made it opacity 0, because we have animation delay. So for 0.3 second it is visible, and then after that it starts this animation. But if I add opacity 0 here, it will be invisible by default. So how about I teach you how to add our own stuff? Okay, so let's say if I add an icon. So I add an icon. Let's make it, I guess, yellow color, because it's a star. And here I'll call it as DM icon. So how can we use this boilerplate? So I'll just copy this DM icon in here. We just need to copy this much. Okay. DM base swiper slider. When this is active, we want to control this icon. Right now, if I do 0.5, it will be like this one would show first, then this one, then this one. But you know what? Let's try different keyframe animation. So let's do add keyframes. DM icon anim, you could name it anything, open bracket, curly bracket, and here we will basically say that at 0% it should be here, and at 100% it should be here. Okay, so at 0% I will say that its scale should be 0.5. and then this one scale should be 2, so it would be like way too huge. And if I copy now, we also have to tell that, hey, use this one, and you know what, go for 3 seconds, and then animation delay of 0.5. One important stuff, we gave it opacity 0 here, right? But we never make it opacity 1 in here. So what we can do, so there are like multiple ways to do it. You could make this 1 so that it turns to 1 when swiper slide is active, and by default you could make it hidden like this. So by default we can make it hidden like this, so that as soon as the swiper active is added, it will turn to 1. Or you could basically you could turn this to 0 and then add it in here like opacity 0. But then this would have one issue, that is it will take 3 seconds to go from 0 to 1. So I'll show this one and the previous one too. So let's add this. Could place it like wherever. So let's place it at the end. You could see it's scaling up right now. What would happen if, but you could see it also took like time to fade in, so it's not visible directly. And you could also do something like this, okay? If you want it to quickly be visible, you could do 1% and do opacity 1, and that way it would instantly turn to 1, and then 100, it will take like this much time to reach like 2. I think this is like a better way. You could say it was instantly visible. It went to 0 again, but that's probably because we didn't add anything in here. And you could see now it works perfectly. Now this way you could create like custom animations that work nicely for your project. Now how can we add autoplay to this? If you go down, there is adding autoplay to slider. Let's copy this and we simply add it around here. After this, comma. And as soon as you publish this, we would see every 2.5 seconds it's moving. So again, if you check the code, it's very basic. Delay, how much time it should take to change. We can do disable on interactions. When someone moves it, it will stop the autoplay. Pause on mouse enter, so when mouse enters it will pause. Stop on last slide, it will stop at the last slide. Reverse direction, if you want, it will start reversing when it reaches end. This is for some transition effect, I think, but just keep that true. Now let's learn about pagination, like different pagination. So if you go down, the first one is pagination style fraction, which is this pagination, like this one number and all. It's very basic to do. So if you go in here, you could see that the type is set to fraction. So let's copy this. This bullet class, active class does not matter for fraction, but I've kept it in here. So let's copy this. If you go in the code, in the pagination part, you can see in the pagination, I have set it to // like this. So you could also do is remove this double slash and it will active that code. So let's remove that code like this. It's a type fraction now. Let's do publish. And you could see we got the pagination very easily. How to change the styling for this one? Very easy. This should be added in the styling. So you could see that whatever we have given the pagination, so DM based swiper pagination, you could see the name of the pagination container, the CSS class. We can basically just copy this much, go to our code and add this in the style property because it's a CSS, right? Like this. And then you could basically just add the color, the font family, weight and all that stuff. You could see now it's changed. You could obviously add like different colors too for like, let's say this one like this, because if you go to the pagination like this, you would see that it has called swiper pagination current and swiper pagination total. So if you type something like DM swiper pagination and DM base, what is it called? Not DM, sorry, swiper pagination current. So if you type swiper pagination current, you can add like different styling for it. And then if you do swiper pagination total, so if you copy this and then change this to like total, that is correct, right? Total, then you could add different styling for it. So maybe you can make this one be red, this one be black, or like different sizes and all. Next one is progress bar. Again, very basic to add. We will add forward slash again, so we do not use fraction, and we can just do this. Let's do publish. And we got the progress bar, but it's like very small. Then why is it small? Well, for this pagination, DM based swiper pagination, in the code, you could see there's something called pagination container size. This one is basically the size of it. So I've set width to be fit content. Basically, fit content means that whatever the content is, that be that size. But for progress bar, we don't want that. So we can basically just remove this for the progress bar. And this one we can make it, let's just keep it like this for now. And let's see. You could say it's full size right now, like this. And rest of it is just like, placing it where you want. You would go and place it in the base swiper again. Create position absolute. I don't know, like 50 height. No padding. And then do publish. And you could see it is working. The code is given in here for the styling. So again, copy this in here like this. And maybe you could, if let's say typing this stuff, which is making it be, let's say 20, let's do 20 and see if it works. If doing this does not work, you would just go in here and type, a height like this, height 20 pixels, okay? But this one is the color and this one is the active color. So you could choose your own personal color. You could also do opacity. You could also add background color, whatever you want. You could even add background image and all that stuff. And you could see we got that stuff like this. So that's all for the pagination. Now just one basic stuff, which is the final stuff for this video, is controlling the slider with any element click. Now we know that we have a button in here, but what if you want to create a slider in here and a button around here with some text and something different stuff, okay? What you could do is, let's say I copied this somewhere else, like this button. Let's do star, and I'll call it as DM. What I've typed, I've called it DM custom swiper custom Prev. So let's do this and paste it like this. And let's do this one. I don't know, let's just choose random one and let's do DM Prev swiper custom next. What this basically means is that we can use any other element, like any other element in anywhere on the page to change the slides. And this is like very case by case, very related if you want it or not. Maybe you have, let's say, two containers, like one full here and one full here, and you want to have like a button here and then some sliders around here. It's going to be like very niche part, or it's going to be like very rarely needed, but it's still a better way to do it. So again, it's a very basic JavaScript. We basically store it in a variable. So we create a variable like a box named DM custom previous button. You could name it anything. And we say that any element has this CSS class, which is going to be this. Store it in this container. Same with this. And when this button is clicked, you could see add event listener clicked. We do swiper slide previous. And when we click here, we do swiper slide next. So if I copy this and paste it in this code at the end before this one, okay, so that it's inside, it's scoped. It's called scoping, but I cannot explain scoping this time, but just keep it at the around here, like before closing. And you could see I can also change it from here. These buttons also work, but I can also change it from here. So you could place it somewhere else or anywhere that you want and it will work. So yeah, that's all for this. I think that's all. Let's see. Let's confirm everything. We did direction, we did loop, mouse wheel, we did this, we did this, we did bullet pagination style, active classes, breakpoints, so slides per view, group, auto, space between, center and free mode. We did fraction, we did progress bar, we did autoplay. We didn't do this, this is a different video. Then we did control any slides. So yeah, that's all. If you liked it, consider subscribing. If you got this template, you can just use like my links to support me. And yeah, my throat is giving up, so I'm just going to leave. Thank you and have a great day.